Welcome to Love and Life. I'm Dr. Karen Anderson Abril here with my co-host,
Pastor Elliot Anderson.
And Love and Life is your place to hear conversations grounded in psych research, psychotherapy,
and biblical truth
to help us thrive in love and life. Hey, Love and Life. Recently, I was invited to appear on a podcast called We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling. And we got into a lot of things that I used to cover a lot before Elliot joined, and we haven't covered as much recently about dating, what to look for in the early days, how to handle things, the dynamics of the dating relationship, and what red flags to notice, what flags may not be all that red, but we should still pay attention to them. All these kinds of issues are things that Elliot and I are very passionate about. We just haven't covered them recently. So we asked Dr. Sterling if we could share my interview on her program with you, the Love and Life family. So that's what we're doing this week, and I hope you enjoy it.
This is We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling, where I give you the tools and skills you need to love better so you can live better. On paper, you've got it all together. You're successful, self-aware, or at least working on it, since none of us are ever really done. So why don't your relationships work out? Why do you keep attracting partners who seem compatible but ultimately aren't? Why does connection so often dissolve into confusion? If this lands on you, you're not alone. There is a particular kind of person, usually high-achieving, outwardly confident, and often seen as a catch, who quietly wonders, is it me? And while I applaud your ability to look inward, sometimes you're actually not the problem. You are instead dating one, which in some way still makes you the problem, just not the kind you think. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Karen Anderson Abril, psychologist, relationship expert, and host of the podcast Love and Life, to explore how high-functioning people end up in low-quality relationships. We'll break down why smart people sometimes choose the wrong partners and how to stop mistaking potential for, well, potential. So let's get into it. This episode is really for the kind of person I work with every day, a strong, successful individual who wants more from their relationships. And while I'm known for helping clients see how they're both the problem and the solution in their relationships, every now and then I get to work with someone who's genuinely doing most of the right things, but they are dating someone who just isn't on their level. I mean, eventually I will tell them, like, you can, of course, make this relationship work, but only if you're prepared to spend years, maybe decades, coaching your partner through it, because this person isn't curious about how relationships work. They're not introspective. They don't have any real interest in growing their emotional intelligence. So all that said, here comes my question. How do you help someone tell the difference between a relationship that is going through normal growing pains versus one where staying means that they're going to have to become their partner's lifetime relationship coach?
Yeah, it's basically what you said in the introduction of this. Is the gist of it is, if you are coaching or feeling that you're with someone who you need to teach how to be in partnership, you kind of have your answer. And I know it's tricky because this is a situation where you could have someone who on paper checks all the boxes. And I don't mean that even in like a way that sounds very unfair or transactional, like, well, you do this and I do this, but just that we are looking for someone whose values align with ours, who we enjoy spending time with. You know, I look at Dr. Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love, which has the intimacy piece, which in this case is the friendship, the romantic chemistry, which is the sexual attraction, and the commitment, and that three-pronged total package, we might call it. We want all those things. And we can, even by his definition, per his model, we could meet someone who really had the fullness of that total package, what he calls consummate love. And yet there's still something amiss. And that's what you're describing. And it's the toughest question, because you can't really pin it down. You're like, there's something not quite here, but I just always feel like I'm coaching or kind of dragging or trying to kind of cajoling my partner to have the same kind of desire for that friendship, intimacy, emotional connection, that it's just not there, even when all this other good stuff is there.
I mean, and there's an element of that I try to implore my clients to lean into, in so much as you are guiding your partner around your idiosyncrasies, your triggers. Hey, when I wake up in the morning, I'm not super chatty. So you might want to give me an hour to wake up so that I can become my full self and like lean into a real conversation with you. Hey, when this happens, here's what I need from you. That's a different kind of coaching than what you're describing, right?
That's a really good point, because we're getting to understand, as to your point, each other's idiosyncrasies, each other's ways of doing life. And we want to learn and then adjust. And your example is perfect. I mean, when my husband and I got married, and he's a morning guy, so he's up and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, need coffee, need a minute.
Oh my gosh.
I know you're coming for me with so much love and excitement. Like, we're starting a new day together, baby. And I'm just like, can't receive this right now. And that's so true. But it's not to what we're talking about here, where we're looking at some of those deeper understanding, human to human connection. And then there in and of itself, Dr. Darcy, we also there are couples who are okay with intimacy levels like just go so deep. And then there's someone who's like, no, I want that real depth of connection on the emotional level. And I think we're all wired differently. So the challenge, to your point earlier, is to say, is this just a season where we're kind of going through some adjustments and I'm not getting the emotional connection that I've had before? Or is this someone I'm going to feel like I'm always the teacher and the student? And then we're almost getting into another dynamic, which I'm sure you talk about a lot with your clients, which is this a fixer-upper? I'm trying to mold this human into being the perfect partner for me, and that's not fair to the person you're in relationship with, nor is it loving.
Not. It's not. And what it will do is, over time, as you well know, it's going to result in the person feeling less than. You're going to harm your partner's self-esteem if you treat them like a brownstone fixer-upper.
Right.
Yeah. It's really problematic. There's a tipping point between, we have to figure out how to coexist together.
That's right. That's right.
And, one partner really imploring the other to turn into a version of themselves that they're disinterested in becoming.
Yes. And that's so interesting too, because when you think of the fixer-upper dynamic, and it kind of gets back to what you were talking about at the top, which is, I love this from my marital therapy course way back in grad school, which is water seeks its own level. So if I am at an emotional maturity level, according to this principle, I will seek out someone who's at about the same level. Now, I'm sure if you're working with couples, you see them, and oftentimes they've identified he's the problem, she's the problem. No. There's a dynamic at work, and both partners are contributing to the dynamics of their relationship. So we have to ask ourselves, if we are in a pattern, once we understand, I do think that there's a pattern here where I'm finding partners who I'm then at some point, a couple months in, feeling not as emotionally connected as I want to, feeling like I have to teach this person how to understand me, how to do life with me, where I'm doing the heavy lifting. It's like I'm pulling teeth. Then we have to understand, why am I seeking that out? Why am I finding that dynamic attractive?
Right.
What is it about me? And it's like what you said, like sometimes it's the dynamic, sometimes it's more one person or the other, but ultimately, whether it's me picking these people time and time again, I can't change anyone but myself. And I'm sure that's something that you reiterate time and time again with the clients with whom you work.
It's interesting. You inadvertently referenced me as a couples counselor. I don't work with couples.
Okay.
I am a relationship therapist who teaches one person at a time how to develop and show up with well-honed relationship skills. Oftentimes, because relationship skills, like any other interpersonal skill, like social skills, they're airborne, they're contagious. We become what we're around. So if I teach one person really good relationship skills without even meaning to, their partner will often catch that and begin employing that in their day-to-day interactions with them. So I guess my point was that sometimes one person changing themselves because it's a co-creation in a couple, that's all it takes to shift. I believe, and this could be naive of me, but I mean, I've been doing this for a lifetime. I'm almost 30 years in practice. Um, I have seen how one person changing changes the dynamic, just like it does in a group setting, just like it does in a family. One person can change and shift the whole dynamic. That doesn't mean that that one person is responsible for shifting the whole dynamic. I think what we're talking about here is once the person has developed and is employing those relationship skills and the emotional intelligence skills, and their partner is not, what is keeping them in this? I guess we'll get into that in a little while. Every now and then, I will get a client who, to their credit, is carrying an enormous amount of weight in their relationship. And at a certain point, if I don't see their partner stepping up to the plate or shifting the dynamic, I start thinking my client is just working too hard. So I'm curious, what's the emotional toll on someone who's doing all the heavy lifting while their partner is emotionally plateaued? I don't want to say stagnant. I don't know which is worse, plateaued or stagnant. Plateaued implies that they're never going to get better. Stagnant could just be momentary. So let's go with stagnant.
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, you're describing what I think we all imagine we would love to have in a relationship, which is two people who want to grow together. I mean, it's naive to think that you're going to begin a partnership and 20 years later, you're going to be the exact same person that you married or that you started a relationship with. I mean, that's just not how we are. We're always growing and evolving. We hope, at least I think people like you and I want that. But then to be fair, there are some people who are saying, hey, I got a good thing going. And I'm really not the kind of person who's super curious about taking things to whatever kind of next level someone thinks I should go to. And that's fair too. You're allowed to live your life on your own terms.
Right.
The problem is, as you're describing, if someone's in partnership with someone who is feeling like, I want to keep growing and getting deeper as a couple and expanding my worldview and so on and so forth. And the partner seems like, actually, status quo is pretty good for me. And this kind of gets back to what we talked about a minute ago. It kind of is a really rough spot for a person to be in because it's going to feel exhausting. They're going to feel that their desire to grow and change and explore and be curious is not being valued by their partner. And maybe it's not. I mean, there's realities that we're dealing with here. And so we want people to try to avoid a scenario like this by understanding at the front end of the relationship what to be looking for. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But it's a really sad place to be. And I'm sure you've seen it with the clients with whom you work, where they're feeling exhausted because they're trying to drag this person into a life with them that is perhaps what this person doesn't want. And again, stagnant may be the one partner saying, you're stagnant, you're not growing, you're just treading water. But again, like I said a moment ago, the other person might be like, I'm okay with the life I've created.
Right.
Why are you trying to drag me into some other realm that I have no interest in? And that's fair too. It's tough.
And ideally, this in the
Right.
beginning.
Right.
I personally, I mean, granted, I am a therapist, but you wouldn't be surprised, but our listeners would be surprised by how many therapists don't know themselves well enough to know this. I was very well aware when I first met my wife that I was growth oriented, that I planned on becoming a different version of myself with every decade, I certainly hope. And that I really needed a partner who was growth oriented as well. In fact, we're Jewish. It's in our ketubah, which is the marriage contract. It talks about us making a commitment to our ongoing growth and development over years. That's a real important value to clarify early on, because if there's an inequity with that, it's very hard. That's an impasse that's very hard to get through.
That's exactly right. And I don't work with couples either, but my brother, who's my co-host on my podcast, he's worked with couples for over 30 years. And he does a lot of premarital work, which I think is probably the most important work he does. And then a lot of couples in crisis.
That's
and
so interesting.
Isn't it?
Just that siblings are both
Oh,
therapists.
yeah,
That's
I know. It's crazy.
That would be my dream. That'd be my dream. Most siblings are like, why am I the only one in therapy? Not to throw shade on my siblings, but some of them really belong in therapy.
Well, I listened to your family estrangement episode, and so you alluded to some dynamics in that episode. So this doesn't surprise me.
Those in particular, I wish that they would do some work on themselves, it wouldn't take much for me to lean in. It really wouldn't.
Yeah.
To those relationships.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting that you and your brother are both therapists. But go on with your answer.
Well, yeah, no, and I like that you brought up an example with you and your wife, because I always think it's helpful. I'm always telling my brother on the podcast, like he and I can get real esoteric and theoretical and talk about all these things, but it always, I feel like as a listener, I always appreciate a concrete example, which you just gave. And there was a guy I dated, when I lived in Chicago, and we were in a band together, and we aligned on so many, again, you talked about the values that are even part of your marital contract per your religion. So we were we had so many values that aligned: the creativity, the piece, the being in a band together, music, and all this. But there were certain ways that I started to see. I was like, this is the way he does life. And it was very much more comfortable staying at home a lot, where I'm very extroverted. I want to go out. I want to try new things. I want to go to museums. I want to go check out this. I want to travel. I want to see all the things, do all the things. And he just wasn't that person. And despite all the good stuff there, I started to sense like I'm going to be forever trying to make him someone he's not. And that is neither fair to him, nor is it loving. It's not fair to me. It's not fair for me to, like you mentioned earlier too, for him to eventually feel like, what is wrong with me just being me? Why are you always trying to make me 2.0? So we have to be very careful about these dynamics early on. But to your point, once someone's in a relationship, then what do we do? Do we go, as you mentioned in the prior question, is it just a season? Or is this really the dynamic that's not really going to change despite everyone doing the best they can? There's going to be a level of dissatisfaction for both parties that's just not sustainable.
And by the way, I want our listeners to know something. Long-term relationships, they're work. They're a grind for periods of time in every relationship. And it is not abnormal to have months and years where you're like, oh my God. But, you have faith, you put your hard work in, you made vows. What's the point if you don't try and push past those moments? I've had them in my own marriage, and thank God we've been able to push past them. And I can't imagine, we've been through so much together. It's been like almost 20 years. I can't fathom a scenario that we can't get through. And that's what getting through those rough years does. It gives you so much evidence to believe in the couple's resilience and ability to move through life together, even in times of difficulty. Like, you're married, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Moments in your relationship of dissatisfaction. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a human connection, and humans are flawed. So yeah, no matter if you're the perfect couple on paper or you've had moments that feel so blissful, you just think, and I've had those moments like, I don't think anyone on the planet has a better relationship than us. But yeah, then there's the realities of life. I'm the second wife, right? There's stepchildren. And so those bring real world dynamics that are challenging. And I'm all about putting a positive spin on everything. But if I would say, oh yeah, no, it's been just a cakewalk, that would be so disingenuous. And certainly as someone who hosts a podcast like you, that wouldn't be authentic, nor would it be loving and kind to any listener who's trying to really glean some support and some advice and some encouragement.
I don't think we're forthright about that enough, about the dark periods in long-term relationships. And I do think we have to put it out there that like, it can be a grind. And hopefully with commitment and the right kinds of support, which often involve a therapist, you get through it. And that, if you didn't want to do that, you shouldn't get married. It's that simple. Don't make vows.
And when you talked about the notion that some people find themselves in a relationship where they feel like they're essentially doing relationship coaching with their partner.
Yeah.
That's one thing that, because I was single for forever. I didn't get married until I was 22. Yeah, that would have been not forever. 42. Yeah. 42. And so I experienced, I almost said endured. Wow. It was a jungle at times, Darcy.
I believe you. And you know what? It is enduring because as a woman, you're judged based on your relationship status in our society.
Oh, totally.
I don't have to tell you that.
No, that's what I wrote my book about, because everyone kept saying, oh, you must be too picky, or you have a doctorate, so you must be intimidating to the men. And, oh, you're so opinionated and you speak your mind. Well, that certainly is going to turn a lot of guys off. And I thought, well, those kind of like beta males wouldn't be my type anyway. Like if you're describing someone who would be intimidated by a woman with an opinion. Yeah, but anyway, all that to say that one of the things that I learned over those years, and as I described from some relationships that didn't work, had a lot of great stuff in them, but didn't work, was that I needed to be with someone who took full responsibility for his psychological and emotional well-being. Now, that doesn't mean that as partners, we don't contribute and enhance.
Yeah.
And we are the icing on the cake, but I cannot fundamentally make my husband feel okay about himself. I can't.
Right.
That's his job to do.
It is.
With his own work, intrapersonal, not interpersonal, intrapersonal with him and God. He's got to decide how he's going to move through this life.
Yeah.
Because it's too much of a burden to think, oh, I'm going to marry the psychologist and then she'll make me feel okay.
Oh my God, that's my worst nightmare.
Right. And I'm not saying anyone does that intentionally, but I had to be aware of that because I knew that I was going to do that for myself. So we walk hand in hand through this life as partners who are committed to, like I said, enhancing each other's experience in this world. But I'm not responsible for him to be okay or to feel okay. I'm not responsible for his emotions, for his self-esteem. And he's not for mine either.
Yeah. I was literally thinking, you're not responsible for his self-esteem.
No.
Because when we are trying to build up our partner's self-esteem, somehow their bodies and their souls just become like Teflon. Everything slides off. It's like, it's a never-ending need that we help contribute to in a dynamic between the two of us. It never works. It never, ever works. Now, for sure. And what's awful is that the opposite is true. Someone can denigrate their partner and erode their self-esteem to a certain extent. I mean, you can't live with that indefinitely.
No.
It will take a toll.
Yeah.
Sometimes the partner isn't abusive. They're not cheating. They're not even mean. They don't show up emotionally. They listen, but they don't respond. They go through the motions, but there's no real sense of emotional presence. How do you help someone recognize the emotional unavailability when it doesn't come with obvious signs? Because in my experience, that kind of relationship, the flat, low conflict kind, can be the hardest to walk away from.
Oh, I totally agree. If the red flags are waving and they're huge and they're flapping in the wind, that's actually an easier relationship to leave than if the flag is kind of, I don't know, like a little pink and it's just kind of fluttering just a little bit. Another bit from my past, just to kind of concretize this, I was engaged before. I was engaged we dated 3 years. We were engaged for a year. And then 2 months before the wedding, I called it off. And it was exactly to your point. I didn't feel that deep connection on the emotional level, actually on the whole Sternberg's model. I think we were committed to each other, but the romantic attraction and connection wasn't there. And we were good friends, but it wasn't quite the intimacy that I was desiring. And so 2 months before, I woke up and ran away from the altar at age 34 and was back in Chicago, back on the scene. So my point there is that I had to realize that this was something that I wasn't finding that depth of connection. And what do? You have to observe your partner in all these different contexts. That's why we have to sit back and watch in those early days. Who is this person? Especially in the first couple months of a relationship where we are caught up in all the feels and we're excited. We can have the tendency to not sit back and watch who this person is showing themselves to be, but we can start to project onto this person who we hope they will be.
Absolutely.
And not see them clearly. And then we can find ourselves in the scenario you're talking about where it's just like, they're fine, but it's not that kind of I mean, what are you wanting in life? For me, I wanted something that was extraordinary. I didn't want just like a good enough connection, a good enough relationship, good enough marriage. So if you're looking for something extraordinary, you have to really be savvy. And it's hard to be savvy and in your head when your heart's going crazy because it's the first couple months and you're all excited. But really, that's what we're looking at here, is trying to figure out, is this a connection that's going to bring me the kind of connection that I desire? Or is this just good enough?
How did you know?
I've been lying to myself, basically. Obviously not intentionally, like, okay. So long story short, real quickly, when you've been single for a while and then a good enough relationship shows up, again, no big red flags waving, just little tiny maybe pink flags fluttering. So you start going, is it me? Maybe I'm the one, I'm the one who's still the common denominator in all my failed relationships is me. So maybe I need to give the good guy a chance. Maybe what I've been going for is the guy who's flashy and exciting, but not the kind you marry. So, and I hit my 30th birthday. So these milestone birthdays, when you work with women and we've got our timeline in our head, most of us do. And I'm supposed to be married by now or in a serious relationship and I'm not. So I wasn't willing to be honest with myself. I kept doubting myself, which I do think we need to be introspective. We do need to be reflecting on our patterns as we've been speaking throughout this episode. But at the same time, I came to the point where like, oh, I guess it must be me. I just got to give the good guy a chance. And if it doesn't feel like, some Hollywood rom-com, whatever I'm expecting to feel, maybe those butterflies are things that you feel when you're in your high school years and puppy love, and they're not real grown-up romantic feelings. So I was falling prey to all that sort of reasoning and thinking. And so stuffed my true understanding of me and what I want in a partnership and what would work for me, and was able to stuff that for a good long time until 2 months. To answer your question, what finally woke me up, it was going through the ritual of the whole wedding prep. And it was before my first shower. And I remember just imagining myself, like I'm going to be opening up gifts and thanking people. And they've flown in from all over the country to give me and the love of my life all these gifts to start our life together. And I was like, I'm going to be lying to everyone in that room.
Wow.
Not intentionally. I'm not trying to be disingenuous, but
Yeah.
I'm going to lie to all these women who love me so much and have come to celebrate my new love. And I'm not madly in love with this man. And they're thinking I am. And I was like, I cannot do this. I absolutely cannot do this.
Wow. I tend to attract clients who are very similar to you, what you're describing of yourself.
Yeah.
They self-critique first, and and I applaud it because there aren't enough of them. There aren't enough people who will self-critique first. But the downside to that is that when things are seemingly good enough, but they're not on fire, or when things are slightly misaligned, or maybe fundamentally misaligned in one area, but good enough in other areas, they do tend to look inward first. And they say things to themselves like, maybe I'm just expecting too much, I'm sure I'm not super easy to live with either. I can imagine that the next partner might have traits in them that I don't like any better than these traits. And it stops them from doing the self-critique that you're describing that you were able to do. What would you say to somebody who's going through that?
Oh, so actually I devote the first chapter of my book to this because I think I've finally analyzed that, yes, to your point, we need to look inward because that's the only person we can control. So I think it's a control thing, really, Darcy. I think that women, we go, okay, I must be the common denominator who's messing up everything. Because if I can figure out the flaw in me, then I can change it.
Yeah.
And I can make a difference in my future relationships. So I think it's actually an empowered notion and impulse.
It totally is.
And it is a good point. But at the same time, it can get to the point where then we start to rip ourselves apart when, frankly, it may just be you haven't met your person. I couldn't meet my husband until I met him. He was married to someone else. I was in Chicago. He's in Indiana. Like there is a thing called timing in this whole journey to love. And I wanted to control it. So I kept ripping on myself and okay, well, what am I doing wrong? And I'm a psychologist, for goodness sake. If I can't figure it out, then how can I help anyone else figure it out? But so what I would say to them is, if there's going to be a tension, you need to be reflective and thoughtful and identify some patterns that are in your control, you could change. And then you also have to have a bit, like you talked about earlier, you have to have a little bit of faith and recognize that everyone's path is different. Even if you wish that your person would have stumbled upon your path a long time ago, and I can totally resonate with that. But at the same time, if you get to the point where you think that it's all on you, then you're tearing yourself down. You're falling prey to these messages that, yes, single women here,
Right.
You're too picky, you're intimidating, all these things. Then you are lining up and receiving those messages. And that's not true either. But it's a very delicate balance.
Yeah, and to be clear, I hear it from my male clients as well. And again, I do think there's a superpower in it. If I'm part of the problem, I can be part of the solution. But there's a tipping point into overly pathologizing and accepting a status quo that is simply, I mean, the writing is all over the walls. And I am saying there's an inequity here that you're going to have to outperform it for the duration. I see no indication that, and I'm so reticent to ever say that to someone. So when I do, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. I am somebody who is ridiculously optimistic about relationships. I tend to think that if my client can become the best partner in the world, then they can make their existing relationship work, which is what most people want when they come to me. They don't want a permission slip to walk away. They want me to help keep the glue together in their relationship. So it's so tricky.
It is. And I would love to just follow up on what you talked about. We have a tendency, especially now, and I've heard you talk about it on your program before. We've got a lot of people on TikTok and Instagram, and that's great. I'm glad helping anyone is wonderful. But in that space, there can be a lot of pathologizing. I have anxiety. I have attachment disorders. I have anxious attachment. Let's put them together. And that's why I can't find, okay, first of all, this self-diagnosis may or may not be useful. From my perspective, it's more often than not useful. You're boxing yourself in, you're labeling yourself, you're constraining your own potential by virtue of your self-definition. You've now told yourself and the world that you have anxious attachment. So I'm sure you're going to find someone who's avoidant attachment, so you can have that lovely dynamic for the rest of your life.
Or disorganized, even worse.
Yeah, right. It's all over the place. No. Yeah. So I struggle because it's so rampant, and it's our business, so to speak. It's our orientation. It's our profession.
So often it's not people in our profession.
I would agree with you.
People who have received good therapy, and like watching a sporting event or like the Olympics, when it's well executed, it looks effortless. And so they decide that they can do the same thing, or they think that they can do the same thing without the degrees that I'll be paying for the rest of my life.
Right.
Without the training, without the degrees, without the supervision, without the license, without the credentials. And so often I wind up with these clients.
Yeah, I bet.
Who have injury on top of injury because they went to a paraprofessional first. But I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it. The TikTok therapy makes me crazy. It makes me see red.
Yeah, I picked that up from an episode I listened to, and I agree.
Just one?
Right. But so the idea that we can be empowered through a pejorative label, and I'm not trying to toss every diagnosis out the window, but even the DSM itself, it changes with the wind.
It does. Gay used to be in it. Right?
Yes, in 1987, yes.
That's crazy. I didn't realize it was that recent. This is my year I graduated high school.
Well, right. So you said being gay was in it? Is that what did I hear you right? Right. Yes, I believe in the 1987 DSM-3R, I believe, if I've got my iterations right. That was maybe the first one where it wasn't in it anymore. So that's my point. Yeah, and it's also very pharma forward 100%. Because, right. So the diagnoses
explain it for the listeners. Why is it pharma forward?
because it's medical doctors, so psychiatrists, not psychologists. So psychiatrists have medical degrees, so they're trained in a medical model, which a medicalized model pathologizes. Every human emotion has and I'm not saying that anyone's intending to do this, but unintended consequences are that a medical doctor framing your emotional state is going to find pathology. Whereas you and I might go, well, that's actually a normal response to a normal human experience.
Particularly this experience, like you
Yes.
could see somebody who's not like they're reporting, I haven't been sleeping, I'm not eating, I'm shopping. And like, an MD is like, oh my God, I got bipolar 1 here happening right before my eyes. But I'm a social worker and I'm like, what's your dating life like? Oh my God, I just met the most amazing person. We're having sex all night long. We are like, so yeah, that's why you're not eating. That's why you're not sleeping. That's why you're shopping. You're having a normal human experience in an extraordinary moment in your life. And if I didn't ask those other questions and I just went off of the pathology, boom, you're on Lamictal. Is that what we give? Or is it? I mean, we're going to give you a mood stabilizer.
Lithium probably for bipolar.
I'm not an MD. I'm not an MD.
No, that's a perfect example though. And that's what, again, if you're out there and just you haven't had the coursework that we've had, you wouldn't even understand that. Why would you know that the DSM is funded? Not only it's created by medical doctors who are funded. I just saw a stat recently in a research study that it might be 60 to 80% of the steering committee members. So these medical doctors have conflicts of interest with pharmaceutical corporations.
Because they're being paid on the side as sponsors from the pharma companies.
Yes.
Wow.
Because they want you and I, social workers can diagnose.
Yeah, of course.
Therapists, right. So they want us to diagnose and have the first plan of action, first treatment protocol be a medication.
Wow. That, of course. And that is why I encourage our listeners to not self-diagnose. We all, for the record, meet criteria for different diagnoses. I mean, depending on the hour of the day, Karen, I could meet criteria or I would tick a couple boxes for a bunch of different things, but to be diagnosed happens over all the areas of your life. Like the problem is presenting in all areas of your life usually. So it's very pervasive and it's very consistent. It's not, I just had a meltdown because I have PMS or because I'm in perimenopause or because like I have postpartum. That is not diagnosable. That is not a moment in time we ever want to give you a mental health diagnosis. So we all meet criteria for lots of things, bits and pieces of the criteria, and the layperson doesn't understand that it's not about, have I had a meltdown in the last week that I can't explain? Yes, Karen, I have. I absolutely have. And I still don't have a personality disorder. I don't.
Right.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of which is to say, closing the loop, we got to stop diagnosing ourselves.
Yes.
We got to stop. We have to question the source. We have to question the source of the information and let somebody who's in debt for life like you and me, because of our training, let us diagnose you. I mean, if a diagnosis has to happen, I'm happy to do it. But I'm always looking for Occam's razor. I'm always looking for the simplest explanation for the weirdest stuff. And it's usually right.
And just, to finish this portion, to me, it's the most unloving, most dehumanizing thing to tell you in that meltdown moment, well, you must have a neurotransmitter imbalance. And think I'm being loving and kind as a therapist?
Yeah.
As someone who's hired to support you, to say, oh, you must have a neurotransmitter. You don't have enough serotonin bouncing around in your synapses. Instead of going, what is happening in your environment, in your relationships? So they come in like, oh, we're so loving and good with all our meds. No, you're not. You're dehumanizing a human who has every reason to have the fullness of this emotion right now. And you want to make it out to be some sort of broken brain situation, which is, there's no scientific actually, that's a whole nother story, but there's no scientific substantiation for many of these medications.
Our understanding of them is way oversimplified.
Yes.
Because they dilute the explanations.
That's right.
So that they're in like little teaspoons sizes
Mm-hmm.
of information, and it's
Mm-hmm.
way too much of an oversimplification of very complicated things going on with a person. You know, I don't just talk about mental health, I live it. And in my 20s, I built a boutique private practice that reflects the kind of therapy I always needed. It's called Alternatives Counseling, and we are now accepting new clients. If you've ever listened to this podcast and thought, I wish I had someone to walk me through this in real life, that is exactly what we do. We work with individuals and couples, especially high achievers, who are killing it in their careers and want that same success in their personal lives. We help you build deeper, healthier connections without losing yourself in the process. This is evidence-based therapy delivered by licensed therapists who are the best of the best. Change is hard. Doing it alone is harder. Come do the work with us at alternativescounseling.com. Let me pivot for a second, because by the time somebody is asking if they're doing too much in a relationship, they're already in it. So I want to back up to the beginning when they're still getting to know someone. What are a few signs early on that there might be an inequity in emotional intelligence and relationship skills? Like, basically, what should we be paying attention to in those first months that could tell us whether we're dealing with potential or someone who just really looks good on paper?
Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to some of the basic dating 101. And we talked about it a few minutes ago, where we want to be careful that we're sitting back, we're watching, observing, we're not getting ahead of ourselves. Certainly, if someone's trying to love bomb, that is a massive red flag. It may feel good in the moment. Oh my gosh, they're so madly in love with me. Like, they've known you 3 weeks. They couldn't possibly be that into you. I hate to say it. You know how great you are. How would they know how great you are yet? Right? Like, if it's a love bombing situation, they are coming in trying because they see you as like, oh, she'll meet my needs, or I have this void, I have this sense of insecurity that she will fill, she will fix. So we have to look for all those kind of early day dynamics, and then we want to give ourselves time to observe this person in multiple contexts, because Darcy, people don't always know themselves well enough to even tell you who they are.
So these initial, that's the biggest problem. It is the biggest problem, because you need to be able to guide your partner around your craziness. We all are crazy.
Yes.
And I need to know the ways in which I'm crazy to tell you, Karen, how you can be my friend. Right?
No, exactly.
I need to tell you I'm not a morning person. You can blow me up all night long. When I go to sleep, I turn my phone off. It's fine. It's on silent. That's not going to bother me. But please don't hit me up repeatedly in the mornings until I've had, I don't know, a couple cups of coffee and like a chance to pet the puppies. Like, I need a minute. But if I don't know that about myself, I just appear to be and think I am a moody person.
No, exactly. I used to say that true love was like two people's pathologies, like blending together and working well together, right? Because we all have our little bit of crazy, like we've been saying. And so we need to make sure that we watch someone. And I'm sure you've heard before, a lot of dating coaches will say, here's the list of questions you have to have on the first date. I was never really into that, because I thought, again, to our point, you may tell me who you think you are. Like, you might be like, I'm so calm, cool, collected. And then like the next time we're on the highway, you've got major road rage. Just like, you may think you're that person, but none of us fully knows each other. So we can't even tell each other who we are. We have to watch that. We have to observe. You have to see how you feel. Be real mindful of your emotions. How do you feel with this person? When are they making an effort when they first meet your family? Are they going to talk to your grandma, who's, you know, the older person in the corner who no one's paying attention to? Are they making those efforts, which are showing you their values, that they value, like, if these people are important to this person I'm getting to know and falling in love with, then it's important to me to connect with them too. Those are things you can't rush that. You have to observe it, and you have to, what does that feel like? Be real still after a date, after date number 10. maybe journal, take some notes. What did you feel when you start touching on some of those more vulnerable topics? Let me give you an example. When I first met my husband, I was living in Chicago. He was living in Indiana. So he was coaching his son's football team. He was offensive coach. So we didn't get to see each other a whole lot. So there was a couple weeks between dates. I was also dating other people, which I also highly recommend. Until one person has asked to be exclusive, then I highly recommend we're dating other people. That helps us not get so tunnel vision on one person. Like, again, like we talked about before, I will have distractions. So I'm not just projecting who I want this person to be and so forth. But my father at that time when we met, he was struggling with vascular dementia. So he was starting to really deteriorate his personality and his cognitive functioning and so forth. And it's not something I want to talk about. Certainly not with someone I was just getting to know. I'm one of the people that prefers to keep things closer until I feel that someone's safe.
Right.
And that in and of itself is another good recommendation. Like sometimes TMI is too much. So
right. Don't be an emotional slut.
Yeah.
It's real basic.
Yes. And if someone else is trying to do that to you, what's that about as well? So
literally.
Yeah. So it was, let's see, it was like end of December. Yeah. A little bit before New Year's. And, so we were on a date and he was saying, what was I doing for New Year's? And I was like, well, I'm actually going to drive home to Cincinnati to be with my parents. It was the first year my dad's dementia had gotten to the point we used to always play together. My family's real musical. So we used to always do like a New Year's gig together and with my two older brothers and me and then my dad. And because his dementia was such that he couldn't do that anymore, we weren't going to be able to do that. My brothers were going to spend New Year's with their families, totally however they wanted to grieve. I personally didn't want my parents home alone for the first New Year's and like forever. Mm-hmm. So I said, I'm going to drive home to Cincinnati. And because he was like, hey, I'll take you out to Chicago. We'll hit the town. Da, da. And I was like, yeah, that sounds lovely. Thank you for the invitation. But I'm going to drive home and be with my 70, 80-year-old parents. And in my head, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking he's going to be like, okay, all right, well, have fun with that and take someone else out to New Year's because like that would be what I would expect. And he looked at me and he's like, well, would they be open to me coming and we could all spend New Year's together? I could take them out to dinner. And I was like, this guy wants to drive 6 hours to go hang out with elderly people for New Year's?
Yeah, that's good. That's real good. That warmed my heart. Yeah.
I know. So it was like the first time I'd been that vulnerable and for his response. But it was like, we met in August, that's December.
Yeah.
So my point is we approximate, we inch by inch, because if I'd laid something out like that early, I don't know how he would have responded. It would have felt unsafe for me to do that, but it was the appropriate time. And then I was like, okay, now let's see. I wasn't trying to like, let's see what he does. It wasn't manipulative.
Literally,
It was just heartfelt. And I'm like telling him, here's what I'm going to do. And he had every choice to do whatever he wanted and respond in his own way. But for him to say that, and then it was the very first time I'd ever teared up and cried in front of him, because I was like, oh, he's safe.
It was really touching.
He showed me who he was.
Yeah.
He could have told me like, I'm a kind, loving, compassionate person. He could have said that all day long for 4 months, but you have to see it. You have to be in real time with it. And so my love for him, like, whew, it went so much bigger too.
Yeah.
It was just a really beautiful moment. So my point to bring back to what are we doing these first couple months? We are being very conscious of how we feel with this person, who we are with this person. Does it feel natural? Does it feel like I can start to just disclose bits and more bits of my authentic self? And when I do that, is it cherished? Is it honored? Like, because he could have been like, what do you want to do that for? Like, I'll take you out in the town. Like, we'll do it up, steak dinner, champagne. No, he saw my heart and was like, oh, wow, that's a woman who cares about her elderly parents.
Yeah.
So that, I guess, long story to get to the point of we want to be very intentional throughout the process and mindful throughout the process. How do we feel? Are we feeling safe? Is this someone with whom I can really be who I am?
Yeah. Karen, I don't even care if we use this in the podcast. How's your dad?
Oh, he did pass. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It's been several years now, but yeah, it was really profound.
It was a pivotal point in the relationship.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It turned a corner.
Yeah.
Then I was like, I don't want to see anyone else.
Then you took yourself off the dating apps.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually love that idea. I love the idea of encouraging people to stay on their dating apps because honestly, it does help you pace the relationship.
Yes.
It does help you like not, it would be like, when you're applying to college, just applying to a 1. Well,
Right.
how bad is that rejection going to feel if you don't get in versus if you apply to 7? Like keep getting to know people while you're dating. I love that advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. For the person who is listening to this and realizes that they are in a relationship with someone who's just not pulling their weight and they don't want to walk away, what can they do to motivate their partner to take more responsibility? And even as I'm asking that question, I hear it. Why am I doing it? Like, why is it our job to motivate a partner to show up? So now I want to put it differently. How do you get a slacker partner to just pull some weight, Karen?
Well, it's tricky to your point because this is setting the stage for all kinds of codependent dynamics, which you and I would never obviously recommend in any way, shape, or form. And no, we have to understand, like we've also said earlier today, that it's not my job to make this person become the person that I want him to be, her to be. But the point is ultimately, yeah, we can only change ourselves. And what comes to mind for me with this question is that pursuer distancer dynamic or the approach avoidance. And one first recommendation that would be very wise to try, and it's going to go against every fiber of your being, because if you're the one who's wanting more, you're going to be the pursuer or the approacher. And that is what works for you. And it probably works for you with your friendship relationships and maybe with family relationships. And so it's part of your personality. And here you are in this romantic partnership and you're wanting to do the same thing that works in other contexts with this. But apparently it's not, because you've got this person who clearly doesn't seem like they, from your perspective, wants to carry their weight and their part in this relationship. But what you would want to do, according to the theory, is that instead of pursuing, do the exact opposite. It's going to feel counterintuitive. It's going to feel very counter to every impulse that you have. But and family systems theory in particular talks about all of the interconnectedness of our being. Like we're in a mobile, and then if one dance step moves, then everyone else has to adjust.
Right.
So if you pull back, there's a good possibility that by virtue of you pulling back, it's going to kind of freak out your partner. And again, you're not trying to manipulate. You're just trying to do one thing to change the dance, because the dance steps that are in place are not working for you.
Right.
And it's possible that if when the pursuer pulls back, creates some distance, then the distancer may come forward. So the one who approaches, you pull back, and you let the one who typically avoids, you let them approach you. But it's going to take a lot of work. It might take you looking at your schedule and going, okay, this is the time when I'm usually coming at my partner, desiring connection. I'm going to have to actually book drinks with the girlfriends, because if I pull back a little bit from this, let him feel the space that he maybe is going to start missing if I'm not always up in his space.
Right.
That would be my first recommendation.
I was going to frame it that way, through attachment theory. If you're somebody who is more predisposed to an anxious attachment style, so you're the pursuer, and you find yourself in a relationship with somebody who's more on the receiving end / more avoidant, you have to give that person space so that they can miss you and lean into you.
Yes.
The avoidant is often avoidant because they're attracting anxious people who are a little too much and a little smothering.
Yeah.
So if you can restrain yourself a little bit, you give the avoidant or the partner, it doesn't matter, let's not diagnose. It gives your partner the space that they need. Like, look, nothing makes me happier than going away for a weekend, not because I want to get away from my wife's stuff, but because I love to feel that I missed her.
Yeah.
I love missing her. And it makes me come back and show up as such a better human. Because we live and work out of the same building all day, every day. It's good to miss your partner. So it's really good to give your partner the space to realize how great you are and that they miss you, and then they have the space to then pursue.
Yeah. And if you think about it, it's going to be difficult. Like I said, it's going to be so contrary to your normal way of being and doing relationships. But remind yourself what you've been doing isn't working.
For sure.
So let's flip it on his head and try. Of course, ideally, you could get into some couples counseling. That would be nice. So that you could have that third party, that objective party to kind of help you guys see each other's perspective from each other's perspective. There's so much that space between, you know, we talk about his perspective, her perspective, her perspective, whatever. There's that space between where probably the truth is actually lies, but
we in the Venn diagram.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That middle part yeah. But that would be my first recommendation. And I think there's enough research on these dynamics that I think it's been shown to be effective. And how good, just try to remind yourself as you're having some self-talk, as you're getting ready to try this, think about when you've been the one pursuing, think about how good it would feel to be pursued. Like, can you give yourself that gift of letting him, her pursue you? How nice would that be? So those sorts of ways of trying to reframe some possibilities, even anticipate in your mind. And that'll kind of maybe give you that boost of encouragement. And then, yeah, like you said, look at the positives of time away. If you are, again, the pursuer, typically look at the positives of, like, you know, especially in early on in a relationship, maybe you've been neglecting your girlfriends because of this new romance. So look at some of the positives of taking that time and space and letting your partner feel that void and like, dang. And then maybe even through that dynamic change, inviting your partner to be the one to pursue you.
Yeah. Yeah. What else you got?
Yeah, I know that's like my number one. I mean, as far, and then again, of course, getting some marriage counseling. The thing that we're talking about, the tricky part is, as you were talking about with avoidant attachment, not that we necessarily need to diagnose, but avoidant people, there can be a lot of reasons for that. They could have felt smothered in the past. They could have felt smothered by their parents. They could feel down deep that they're not equipped, or you're overwhelming them. You may feel super needy. I mean, there's so many different scenarios that could be going on, but kind of getting back to the theme of this entire episode, it's not that we want to diagnose ourselves or the other person. We just want to be able to have some clarity on the dynamics, what's working, what's not, and then what is reasonable to see that we can fix. And I love that you're optimistic. My brother, I was talking about before, my co-host, he's very optimistic too. Sometimes I'm the one, and I guess maybe having called off an engagement, I can also be the one that sometimes goes, and I've alluded to this already, like, let's not try to change each other. And so, and that can seem pessimistic, but I also feel like it's honoring the other human being and their choices and the way that they're wired. So there's a lot of nuance there, but ultimately I would want to try some things, but I also wouldn't want to feel, as you said, even when you were framing the question, that you're like, oh my gosh, I'm basically saying that it's my responsibility to make this whole relationship work, because that's not a thing. And one other thing I wanted to say on this note, another thing for people, especially in the early days of dating, I remember when I was single all those years, and I've talked about that already in this episode, but one of my friends who had a great marriage, still does, and I was single, and she'd been married like 6-7 years at that point, and she looked at me, she's like, Karen, so much of marriage is just wanting the same things out of life, wanting to do life in a similar way. And I remember from a marriage therapy class way back a million years ago that our similarities are what marriage therapists call money in the bank. So the more values we have in common, the more things, like, both people are extroverted. So if my husband's like, hey, I come home 5 o'clock on a Friday, hey, I invited the Jones over, I'm like, cool. Some people would lose their mind, like, what, you didn't check with me? So these things, these ways of doing life, wanting the same things from life, it's money in the bank. These are things you will not fight about because you're similar.
Right.
And so it makes it so much easier.
It does make it easier. It does. However, the way in which we enact those traits changes with every decade. I'm somebody who is very, very active. I am hyperactive to a pathological level. I have ADHD, and I always have. The way my desire for activity was different in my 40s than it is now in my 50s. It's different. I still work out quite a bit, but I'm not doing the same things that I did in my 40s. I'm doing different things now. And I worry that people can get too locked into this idea of must find similar interests. It's not, to me, it's not about the interests. It's about what you've said so many times today is the values. So what is the value underlying it is that I need to be active. I need to be active, and I will be active until I have no more air in my lungs. It will look different with every passing decade, but I don't need somebody as a partner who also is a dancer. I don't need that in my life, even though that's what I've done for many years and thankfully still do.
No, I think that's a good point. And in some cases, you could have too many cooks in the kitchen. Like, I didn't want to marry a psychologist. I'm a psychologist. So, and my husband's in sales. He's a
For the record, I didn't either, but it just turned out that way. Okay.
Really?
I would not have sought that out. No, there is a lot of talking about feelings in this house. I'm just like, holy cow. I never imagined myself to have more masculine energy than my partner, but here we are. Here we are.
Yeah.
We've arrived.
No, so I think your point is valid. It can be easy if even those kind of surface, like the activities and hobbies are the same. And I don't think it's even fair to say easy, because like we've said, relationships,
it's not easy.
They take intentional
But money in the
effort.
bank is a real thing. No, I
But it
hear
is,
that.
yeah.
I agree with you. No, that is true. That is true. It does make things easier. But if you're relying on similarities to get through a long-term relationship, let alone a marriage, you're going to be out of luck.
Yeah.
You're going to be out of luck because you guys are going to grow and evolve.
Right.
And if the underpinnings of your values are not aligned, then those similar activities are going to dissipate with time.
Yeah. It's just that whole thing that you were talking about, like trying to present information that can help someone not be stuck where they feel like they're doing all the heavy lifting and the emotional intimacy of the relationship that you're describing. And then we can do some things, we can try some adjustments. And but I mean, at the same time, I'm thinking if someone is just like, I'm not willing to work on this. I mean, and I think there are a lot of people, frankly, who are in marriages where they just go, okay, he's not willing. She's not willing. I'll do my best. And maybe they'll just stick it out and it'll be okay. It'll be fine. Yeah. And they've got kids together and they'll have grandkids together and that will all be wonderful. But gosh, that's not what I wanted. And I'm sure it's not what you wanted. And it's not how you're coaching and your clients we're looking to thrive in our marriage and in our relationship. But
I don't think it's what any little girl or boy imagined when they were imagining their life partner.
Right.
Like, okay, we'll make it work.
Right.
There's moments of that. And those moments are too long, just so you know. They're going to be longer than either of you want or feels like you can bear. And if you have emotional intelligence, if you have the support of a therapist, if you have relationship skills, you're going to come out the other side. And the bond you're going to have from having done it together is going to be the stuff that really allows for safety and trust and security in a way that, aligned similarities just can't give you.
That's a really good point. No. And again, I don't currently work with couples, but like I was mentioning, my brother does, and he does crisis recovery, marriage recovery, where there's been infidelity and multiple things that no one would ever wish on their marriage. And he's like, Karen, sometimes through that valley, to your point a moment ago, the depth of connection, the surface marriage they had, many will say, we're better. I wouldn't want to live through that hell again. Don't get me wrong.
No, nobody does.
But we're more real with each other. We're more intimate, more vulnerable. It's a real marriage now. And again, no one wants to go through the fire to get that. But should you have to go through the fire, that is the silver lining. And that can be the beauty of having to go through that valley.
I love this conversation so much. I could literally keep going, but I do think we should wrap. Karen, where can people learn more about you?
My podcast is called Love and Life, and it's about thriving, a very holistic. You mentioned some of the stuff I take issue with pharma trying to medicalize our entire human experience and our relationships. And so we take a holistic approach to mind, body, and spirit. So we look at cognitive strategies to get our heads right, make sure we're in a positive mindset, all the CBT. We talk about that for days. Body, of course, we can't extricate the crappy food we're eating and the processed food and the seed oils, and we got to go out and get our vitamin D. We got to move, like you're talking about. We got to be active. If we think we're going to thrive in life, we've got to take care of this meat suit that we're in, and then the spiritual realm. So my brother and I believe that we need to have a connection to God, to have a fullness of our thriving in who we are wired to be and how we're wired to connect with others. So mind, body, spirit, loveandlifemedia.com is our website. And I'm sometimes on Instagram, although social media gets a little rough. So I've been doing more on Substack. I don't know if you've done much with Substack, but so starting to post there.
Love that.
So that's Love and Life Media on Substack.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Karen. I really love this.
Same. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We Need to Talk with Dr. Darcy Sterling is a Sterling Standard production. Editing and sound engineering is by Bart Migal. Our theme music is by Trending Music. Special thanks to Amanda Cristiani, Robin Genshin, and Inez Gut. If this episode resonated for you and you happen to know someone who needs to hear it, feel free to share it with them, just maybe not your partner. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode packed with the relationship, dating, and mental health hacks you have come to expect. References are always linked in the show notes. We'll see you soon.